Next question is: after presenting a working proof of concept for a new application that uses AWS API Gateway, a developer must set up a team development environment for the project. Due to a tight timeline, the developer wants to minimize time spent on infrastructure setup, and would like to reuse the code repository created for the proof of concept. Currently, all source code is stored in AWS Code Commit. Company policy mandates having alpha, beta, and production stages with separate Jenkins servers to build code and run tests for every stage. The development manager must have the ability to block code propagation between admins at any time. The security team wants to make sure that users will not be able to modify the environment without permission. How can this be accomplished? A. Create API Gateway Alpha, Beta, and Production stages. Create a code commit trigger to deploy code to the different stages using an AWS Lambda function. B. Create API Gateway Alpha, Beta, and Production stages. Create an AWS code pipeline that pulls code from the code commit repository. Create code pipeline actions to deploy code to the API Gateway stages. C. Create Jenkins servers for the alpha, beta, and production stages on Amazon EC2 instances. Create multiple code commit triggers to deploy code to different stages using an AWS Lambda function. D. Create an AWS code pipeline that pulls code from the code commit repository. Create alpha, beta, and production stages with Jenkins servers on code pipeline. Correct answer is D. Next question is: an online company uses Amazon EC2 auto-scaling extensively to provide an excellent customer experience while minimizing the number of running EC2 instances. The company's self-hosted Puppet environment in the application layer manages the configuration of the instances. The IT manager wants the lowest licensing costs and wants to ensure that whenever the EC2 auto-scaling group scales down, removed EC2 instances are deregistered from the Puppet master as soon as possible. How can the requirement be met? A. At instance launch time, use EC2 user data to deploy the AWS Code Deploy agent. Use Code Deploy to install the Puppet agent. When the auto-scaling group scales out, run a script to register the newly deployed instances to the Puppet master. When the auto-scaling group scales in, use the EC2 auto-scaling EC2_instance_terminating lifecycle hook to trigger deregistration from the Puppet master. B. Bake the AWS Code Deploy agent into the base AMI. When the auto-scaling group scales out, use Code Deploy to install the Puppet agent, and execute a script to register the newly deployed instances to the Puppet master. When the auto-scaling group scales in, use the Code Deploy application stop lifecycle hook to run a script to deregister the instance from the Puppet master. C. At instance launch time, use EC2 user data to deploy the AWS Code Deploy agent. When the auto-scaling group scales out, use Code Deploy to install the Puppet agent, and run a script to register the newly deployed instances to the Puppet master. When the auto-scaling group scales in, use the EC2 user data instance stop script to run a script to deregister the instance from the Puppet master. D. Bake the AWS Systems Manager agent into the base AMI. When the auto-scaling group scales out, use the AWS Systems Manager to install the Puppet agent, and run a script to register the newly deployed instances to the Puppet master. When the auto-scaling group scales in, use the Systems Manager instance stop lifecycle hook to run a script to deregister the instance from the Puppet master. Correct answer is A. Next question is: a company discovers that some IAM users have been storing their AWS access keys in configuration files that have been pushed to a Git repository hosting service. Which solution will require the least amount of management overhead while preventing the exposed AWS access keys from being used? A. Build an application that will create a list of all AWS access keys in the account and search each key on Git repository hosting services. If a match is found, configure the application to disable the associated access key. Then deploy the application to an AWS Elastic Beanstalk worker environment and define a periodic task to invoke the application every hour. B. Use Amazon Inspector to detect when a key has been exposed online. Have Amazon Inspector send a notification to an Amazon SNS topic when a key has been exposed. Create an AWS Lambda function subscribed to the SNS topic to disable the IAM user to whom the key belongs, and then delete the key so that it cannot be used. C. Configure AWS Trusted Advisor and create an Amazon CloudWatch events rule that uses Trusted Advisor as the event source. Configure the CloudWatch events rule to invoke an AWS Lambda function as the target. If the Lambda function finds the exposed access keys, then have it disable the access keys so that it cannot be used. D. Create an AWS config rule to detect when a key is exposed online. AWS config send change notifications to an SNS topic. Configure an AWS Lambda function that is subscribed to the SNS topic to check the notification sent by AWS config, and then disable the access key so it cannot be used. Correct answer is C. Next question is: company policies require that information about IP traffic going between instances in the production Amazon VPC is captured. The capturing mechanism must always be enabled and the security team must be notified when any changes in configuration occur. What should be done to ensure that these requirements are met? A. Using the user data section of an AWS CloudFormation template, install dump on every provisioned Amazon EC2 instance. The output of the tool is sent to Amazon EFS for aggregation and querying. In addition, scheduling an Amazon CloudWatch events rule calls an AWS Lambda function to check whether dump is up and running and sends an email to the security organization when there is an exception. B. Create a flow log for the production VPC and assign an Amazon S3 bucket as a destination for delivery. Using Amazon S3 event notification, set up an AWS Lambda function that is triggered when a new log file gets delivered. This Lambda function updates an entry in Amazon DynamoDB, which is periodically checked by scheduling an Amazon CloudWatch events rule to notify security when logs have not arrived. C. Create a flow log for the production VPC. Create a new rule using AWS config that is triggered by configuration changes of resources of type EC2 VPC. As part of configuring the rule, create an AWS Lambda function that looks up flow logs for a given VPC. If the VPC flow logs are not configured, return a non-compliant status and notify the security organization. D. Configure a new trail using AWS Cloud Trail Service. Using the user data section of an AWS CloudFormation template, install dump on every provisioned Amazon EC2 instance. Connect Amazon Athena to the CloudTrail and write an AWS Lambda function that monitors for a flow log disable event. Once the CloudTrail entry has been spotted, alert the security organization. Correct answer is C.